Our theme and our text for today for fearless living is from the Old Testament. It's from the book of Genesis. It's the 1st to the 11th verse, the 14th, the 15th, the 20th, the 24th, the 27th to the 28th, and the 2nd verse to the 3rd. They had recommended I read all of it, but I don't think we need all that, because the gist of it is in what I have put together here. But listen to these words and think about this wonderful, wonderful passage from Genesis, which was inserted about 536 BC after the exile into the Torah. And here it is. At a time when they needed hope, and the children of Israel felt lost. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was moving over the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, one day. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament and separated the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. And there was evening, and there was morning, a second day. And God said, "Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit in which is their seed, each according to its kind upon the earth." And it was so. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years, and let them be lights in the firmament of heaven to give light upon the earth." And it was so. And God said, "Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the firmament of the heavens." And God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds, cattle and creeping things, and beasts of the earth according to their kinds." And it was so. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him, male and female he created them. And God blessed them. And God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God finished his work which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. So God blessed the seventh day, he hallowed it, because on it God rested from all his work which he had done in creation. God's blessings be on the reading of his most holy word. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be always in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. Fearless living. This is an amazing piece of theology, this book of Genesis. About 1000 BC, during the building of the temple compound by Solomon, a Levite who had the luxury of having time to write in a society of hard work and slave labor, sat down and under the inspiration of God composed chapter 2 forward of what we now know as the brilliant and complex creation story of Adam and Eve. And yet, it was a time after terrible loss, that they brought together this wonderful creation story to remind us where it all came from. It's a story of human relations. It's a story of God as the creator of life and living in our context and relationship with God. And you know, in the beginning, life was fearless until it changed. But the best part was that life was precious. Precious. Streams fed the amazing garden God created. It was a world independent of rainfall. And these headwaters were the waters of life, like they still are in the Mideast. So valuable that the writer added that there was gold there. Water has always been, and in the years to come we shall all see, water is precious. And God took his precious and amazing creature Adam, whom he formed from the dust of the ground, and whom he breathed the very breath of God into. And he gave him God's Spirit, and then he took a rib from him, and he created a mate for him, because we are meant for relationship. We are intricately linked with God because of that, and he immediately set boundaries for this royal couple by saying, everything I have created and put into this garden is yours. But the tree of good and evil is off limits. And you may recall the rest of the tale. Eve wanted power, which is representative of the human condition. She unthinkingly gave away the little power that she already had in the process. Yes, Eve gave away what she already had. For in her innocence, she had the respect of God, which is a precious thing in and of itself. And if she didn't already have enough, Eve wanted more. So much so that she was willing to jeopardize this wonderful, carefree, work-free life to get it. Our author is careful to add that there was no one yet to work the ground. She was willing to trade it for a life of guilt, shame, labor in birth, and physical toil in that dry, hot climate. And her children and children's children forever. Worst of all, the shame of rejection, being thrown out. Thrown out, and for what? God gives us so much. God really does. The question is whether we appreciate it or not. And only after we lose it do we reflect upon it. For Genesis 1 was written and added to the story 500 years later, after the people had lost everything and their negligence of their covenant with God. But through God's gracious action, they came straggling back. They came to realize that they had lost what was precious. They had the yearning need to thank God for saving them by saying that the creation they had so badly treated nevertheless was good. And it was made to be good. Sometimes we are never satisfied with what God has already given us. So what can we do about it? We can live fearlessly. I believe that we can fearlessly turn away from our habits of taking advantage of our creation by responding to the need to preserve our environment. For instance, when there's a water shortage, not watering the lawn. During the winter, we can conserve. There's only so much gas and oil, but this is not a sermon about that. But what it is about is the fact is that we can advocate for our government to put resources into using solar power, windmills. We can cut down on our natural resource consumption. The list is endless. We can teach our children healthy eating. We can use less gas to use less ethanol consumption, which is a corn product. There's so much to this. But more than that, it comes down to personal decisions and personal choices. Fearless living entails believing that God and his creation are both at the center of our lives, not ourselves. You know, I remember as a young child, I went to Sunday school one Sunday and I received a little plant from my Sunday school teacher with the lesson that faith can start out the size of a little seed and it can grow like the plant in the pot if it's only watered and if it's nurtured. But if the plant is not watered, if the plant is not nurtured, it will surely wither and die. Thank you, Janice, for that children's sermon. It's wonderful. But our faith is the same thing. If we don't do what is right by God, then we will surely wind up like Eve in the garden. We will make bad choices. We will listen to the eternal liar and living out our lives in a lie. And unfortunately, there are consequences for what we do. I remember being so excited, I looked in that little pot every single day, and I waited to see what the seed was going to produce. And sure enough, it grew, and it grew, and it grew, and it became a flower. And the day that it flowered, I was so happy. And to this day, if you go in my office, I know it's a jungle, but anyway. You go to my office, there are plants that are living in there. And you know what? I still have the little potted plant that Pam Donato gave me 12 years ago, and it has 6 blossoms on it. Can you believe it? Pam is always in amazement how anything can live in that office, but it does. And I love to see them every day that I come here, and no matter what has happened, I notice that they grow and they change. And you know, when I look at that plant, it gives me hope. Because when it's dormant, it teaches me patience. And the same is with my faith. You know, in this church, every day, my faith is challenged to grow. It's challenged to change. It's challenged even through events may try to turn my attention away from my faith. When my faith flowers, I have hope. I have to realize that the source of my faith is prayer and my relationship with God. Now, am I going to let bad events, tragedies, illness, setbacks, anger, meanness, and lies, and all of us, are we going to let people who deceive us, who trick us and detract us from our relationship with God succeed? No. Being faithful to God in these halcyon days of war, and rumors of war, and the wretched violence everywhere, and the crazy up and downturns of weather and economic changes means that more than ever we need to focus on our relationship with God. We need to do what God tells us to do in Scripture. And this church is a beacon of hope. This church is a beacon of love for a very needy world. I don't know about you, but I need it. And I hope you do too. So what do we learn today? What is it about the human condition that we are never satisfied with what we already have? God is a God of bountiful gifts and creation above anything we could ever come up with. It's impossible to outgive. It's impossible to outlove God. Possible. Fearless living. We are no longer children. We are no longer looking to God to parent us. We are adults. We have to deal with life as it is. Whether we're loving, we're laughing, whether we're crying, whether we're grieving, in all of our anger, in all of our fears, we face life in faith with all the best and the worst in life that life throws at us, with the full knowledge that God faces these trials right along with us. We heard this morning about God and the children of Israel with Moses, struggling in the desert to find a new identity. His struggle is our struggle. And I know that the disease, the disappointments, the loneliness, the hardships of this world, which mold and shape our faith, pale in comparison to the fabulous bounty and gifts of creation. The beauty inherent in all of these beautiful trees and flowers and animals that feed us and give us pleasure in our lives. These gifts are shared by God freely with us. So now I ask you, aren't we then to freely share them with others? We share our gifts, remembering that God created them all for us and saw that it was good. Fearless living to the glory of God.